Today, we're exploring one of the most fascinating and collectible coins in modern United States, Numismatics, the Susan B. Anthony dollar. We'll uncover its remarkable history, distinctive design, rare varieties, condition, and most importantly, what these coins can actually be worth today. Some exceptional examples can command impressive premiums, so stay with us as we discover what makes this iconic dollar such a prized treasure among collectors. First up, we're talking about one of the most rare and valuable, the 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollar with the Philadelphia P. mint mark stands as one of the most fascinating chapters in modern United States coinage, captivating enthusiasts not only because of its distinctive appearance, but because it represents a major moment in American monetary and cultural history. Introduced at a time when the United States was searching for a practical smaller dollar coin, this first-year issue immediately became a highly recognizable piece of American currency. Today, collectors are especially interested in well-preserved examples, scarce varieties, and coins displaying unusual minting characteristics. While an ordinary circulated 1979 Philadelphia Susan B. Anthony dollar is generally not an extremely expensive coin, exceptional pieces can command substantially higher prices. For the most desirable varieties and top-certified grades, values can potentially reach into the hundreds or even several $1,000s, with particularly rare and exceptional examples attracting serious competition. That combination of history, design, condition, and rarity is what transforms an apparently ordinary dollar into a prized treasure for the numismatic community. The story of the 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollar begins during a period when American policymakers were reconsidering the size and practicality of circulating coins. The United States Mint wanted a smaller dollar that would be easier to carry and use than the large Eisenhower dollar, and legislation authorized a new coin honoring Susan B. Anthony, the pioneering advocate for women's voting rights. The Philadelphia Mint produced millions of these dollars in 1979 without a mint mark initially appearing on the coin's obverse, although the Philadelphia issue is identified by its absence of a mint mark. The P association is therefore important historically, but should not be confused with a visible P mint mark on ordinary 1979 Philadelphia circulation strikes. The coin entered circulation during a period of economic uncertainty, inflation, and changing consumer habits, making it a tangible connection to the America of the late 1970s. Its subject was equally significant. Susan B. Anthony had spent decades advocating for women's suffrage, and her appearance on United States currency represented an important cultural milestone. The 1979 dollar therefore carries meaning far beyond its $1 face value, connecting modern collectors with the history of political reform, women's rights, and the evolution of American coinage. The artistic design of the Susan B. Anthony dollar is another reason this coin continues to attract attention. The obverse features a portrait of Susan B. Anthony facing right, designed by chief engraver Frank Gasparo, with the inscriptions "Liberty, in God We Trust," and the date 1979 surrounding the portrait. The reverse presents an adaptation of the Apollo 11 insignia, showing an eagle descending toward the lunar surface while holding an olive branch, surrounded by the inscription United States of America, $1, and EPLURIBUSUNUM. The coin was struck in a copper-nickel-clad composition over a copper core, measuring approximately 26.5 millimeters in diameter and weighing about 8.1 grams. Its compact size was deliberately chosen to make the dollar more convenient, although its similarity in size to the quarter eventually created confusion among the public. On a superb uncirculated example, the surfaces can display brilliant luster, sharply defined lettering, and attractive contrast between the portrait and surrounding fields. For collectors, the absence or presence of a mint mark, the exact reverse variety, strike quality, and surface preservation can all influence desirability. Rarity is where the 1979 Philadelphia issue becomes especially interesting. The basic 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollar was produced in very large quantities, so the date by itself does not make every example rare or highly valuable. Instead, collectors must look closely at variety, condition, and minting characteristics. One of the most famous 1979 varieties is the wide rim, also known as the near-date variety, in which the date sits noticeably closer to the rim than on the more common narrow rim or far-date version. Although this variety is associated particularly with Philadelphia production, it is important to identify it correctly rather than assuming every 1979 Philadelphia dollar is rare. Proof coins also have their own collecting distinctions, including the well-known Type 2, Clear S variety from San Francisco, but that is a different issue and should not be confused with a Philadelphia circulation strike. For a 1979 Philadelphia dollar, exceptional preservation is often the greatest source of premium value. Coins that have escaped circulation with brilliant luster, minimal marks, strong strikes, and attractive surfaces can become considerably more desirable than worn examples. This is why collectors carefully search old collections, rolls, dealer inventories, and inherited accumulations for coins that have survived in remarkable condition. When it comes to value, the most important point is that the ordinary 1979 Philadelphia Susan B. Anthony dollar is generally modestly valued, while exceptional grades and recognized varieties can bring substantially larger premiums. Circulated examples are commonly worth close to face value, while attractive uncirculated pieces can command more depending on grade and market demand. Certified coins at very high grades, particularly examples with exceptional eye appeal or desirable variety attribution, can move into the hundreds of dollars and in extraordinary circumstances into the thousands. A broad $1,000 to $8,000 range should therefore be viewed as applying only to unusually rare, exceptionally preserved, or strongly sought-after examples, rather than a normal 1979 Philadelphia dollar. The exact price depends heavily on professional grading, population reports, variety attribution, certification, strike quality, luster, surface preservation, and the strength of demand at the time of sale. Historical importance adds another layer of appeal because this was the inaugural year of a coin honoring Susan B. Anthony. For serious collectors, owning a superb example is not simply about possessing an old dollar. It is about preserving one of the most recognizable symbols of a major transition in United States coinage. The 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollar, with its Philadelphia origin, represents a remarkable blend of American history, artistry, social change, and modern numismatics. Its portrait commemorates a woman whose campaign helped reshape the nation's political landscape, while its reverse connects the coin to the extraordinary achievement represented by the Apollo 11 program. Its first-year status, distinctive compact design, famous 1979 varieties, and enormous collector following have ensured that this dollar remains one of the most captivating modern United States coins. Although the majority of 1979 Philadelphia examples are not worth thousands, the hunt for exceptional condition pieces and legitimate varieties gives the series enduring excitement. A superb uncirculated specimen, especially one with a recognized scarce variety and professional certification, can become a prized treasure and a tangible connection to the past. For numismatists worldwide, the real fascination lies in that possibility. A coin created to circulate as ordinary money can, through history, rarity, preservation, and collector demand, become an extraordinary piece of American heritage. And secondly, where ordinary United States coins can reveal extraordinary stories of history, rarity, and value. The spotlight falls on the 1980 D. Susan B. Anthony dollar, a $1 coin struck at the Denver Mint and identified by its small d mint mark. At first glance, this compact dollar may look like an ordinary piece of modern pocket change, but its historical importance and the premiums attached to exceptionally preserved examples make it worth a much closer examination. The key to understanding its value is recognizing that the date and mint mark alone do not make every 1980 D dollar rare. Condition, strike quality, original luster, surface preservation, grading, and unusual mint characteristics can make enormous differences in the marketplace. A worn example may be worth little more than its face value, while an exceptionally preserved certified specimen can attract considerably more attention. That difference is exactly what makes the 1980 D. Susan B. Anthony dollar such an interesting coin for collectors and treasure hunters. The story of this coin begins in the late 1970s, when the United States Mint was looking for a smaller replacement for the large Eisenhower dollar. The Susan B. Anthony dollar was introduced in 1979 and became historically significant as the first United States circulating coin to feature a prominent woman. Susan B. Anthony was an important figure in the American women's suffrage movement, making her portrait a powerful choice for a new national coin. The smaller dollar was intended to be more convenient for everyday use, but the public quickly discovered a major problem. Its size and appearance were easily confused with the quarter. By 1980, public acceptance remained limited, yet production continued at the Denver Mint. The 1980 D therefore represents an important moment in the short first era of the Susan B. Anthony dollar. It was produced during a period of economic uncertainty, inflation, changing consumer habits, and technological development in the United States. The coin was intended to become a practical part of everyday commerce, but its relatively brief circulating life ultimately helped give the series a distinctive place in American numismatic history. The design of the 1980 D is immediately recognizable. On the obverse is a right-facing portrait of Susan B. Anthony, created by United States Mint chief engraver Frank Gasparro. The word Liberty appears above her portrait, while In God We Trust is positioned to the right and the date 1980 appears below. 13 stars surround the central design, symbolizing the original 13 colonies. Denver D mint mark appears near the date area and identifies the facility responsible for striking the coin. The reverse carries an equally historic image, showing an eagle approaching the moon, surrounded by 13 stars. The inscriptions United States of America, EPLURIBUSUNUM, and $1 complete the reverse. The design was based on the Apollo 11 mission insignia, giving this dollar a fascinating connection to America's achievement in space exploration. The coin measures approximately 26.5 millimeters across and weighs about 8.1 grams, with a copper-nickel-clad composition and reeded edge. For collectors, every part of the design matters because sharp details, clean fields, strong lettering, and attractive original luster can distinguish a premium specimen from an ordinary circulated coin. When rarity enters the discussion, an important distinction must be made. The 1980 D Susan B. Anthony dollar is not generally considered a major key date in circulated condition, because substantial numbers were produced and many examples remain available. However, rarity can change dramatically when condition is considered. Most coins that entered circulation acquired scratches, contact marks, dull surfaces, fingerprints, abrasions, and other imperfections. Finding a coin that survived with brilliant original luster and extremely few marks becomes much more difficult at the highest grades. This is known as condition rarity, and it can be far more important to advanced collectors than the original mintage figure. A coin may have been produced in large numbers yet become scarce in superb condition decades later. The 1980 D is a good example of this principle. Ordinary circulated pieces are relatively accessible, but truly exceptional specimens with strong strikes, pristine surfaces, attractive luster, and elite certified grades can become much more desirable. This is why a collector should never assume that every coin with the same date and mint mark has the same value. Collector demand for the 1980 D comes from several different directions. Collectors assembling complete Susan B. Anthony dollar sets need the Denver issue as part of their collection, while specialists in modern United States coinage may focus on exceptional grades, varieties, and mint errors. Historical collectors are also drawn to the coin because of Susan B. Anthony's significance and the unusual circumstances surrounding the introduction of her portrait on circulating American money. The coin also belongs to a fascinating period in United States monetary history, when the mint was experimenting with the size and practicality of modern dollar denominations. The connection to the Apollo 11-inspired reverse adds another layer of historical interest. For collectors, therefore, the 1980 D is not simply an old dollar. It is a physical reminder of changing American society, the struggle for women's voting rights, the development of modern coinage, and the country's technological achievements. An ordinary example may be affordable, but a spectacular example can become highly desirable because collectors are not simply buying the metal or denomination. They are competing for the best surviving representation of an important historical issue. The biggest question is its actual market value. In today's market, an ordinary circulated 1980 D Susan B. Anthony dollar generally does not command an enormous premium and may trade around face value or for a modest amount above it depending on condition and demand. Attractive uncirculated examples can bring several dollars, while better preserved pieces can move into the tens of dollars. Professionally certified examples in strong grades can command substantially higher premiums, with exceptional coins potentially reaching hundreds of dollars. At the very top of the grading scale, where population becomes extremely limited, competitive bidding can push prices significantly higher. However, a high advertised price is not proof that a coin is worth that amount. Actual completed auction sales, professional certification, grade population information, and the exact characteristics of the individual specimen provide much stronger evidence. The most important lesson is that a 1980 D Susan B. Anthony dollar should not be described as a multi-thousand-dollar rarity simply because it is old or carries a Denver mint mark. Its value depends on what makes that particular coin exceptional. A normal circulated piece and a top-grade certified specimen can occupy completely different levels of the market. For collectors searching for a valuable 1980 D, condition should be the first priority. Examine the fields and the raised design elements under good lighting, looking for scratches, heavy contact marks, cleaning damage, discoloration, and signs of circulation. Original mint luster is especially desirable, while a coin that has been polished or harshly cleaned can lose considerable collector appeal. The portrait of Susan B. Anthony, the lettering, stars, eagle, and reverse fields should all be examined carefully for strike quality and preservation. A promising coin should never be aggressively cleaned because removing surface material can permanently damage its numismatic value. Coins can be found in old collections, inherited accumulations, dealer inventories, estate collections, coin rolls, and other groups of United States currency. If an unusual feature appears to be a genuine mint error or recognized variety, professional attribution becomes important because post-mint damage can sometimes resemble an error. For coins that appear exceptionally valuable, professional grading and authentication can provide an independent assessment. The difference between an ordinary coin and a premium example may be surprisingly subtle, making patience, magnification, comparison, and knowledge of grading standards essential tools for serious collectors. The 1980 Susan B. Anthony dollar ultimately represents much more than a $1 denomination. It captures an important moment when the United States Mint attempted to create a smaller, modern dollar while honoring Susan B. Anthony, a major figure in American history. Its Denver Mint mark identifies its place of production, its portrait commemorates a landmark figure, and its Apollo 11-inspired reverse connects it to one of the most remarkable achievements in American technological history. Its greatest collecting lesson is the difference between ordinary availability and true condition rarity. Most circulated examples are not fortunes, but beautifully preserved coins in exceptional certified grades can attract serious attention and substantial premiums. That combination of history, design, condition rarity, and collector demand gives the 1980 Susan B. Anthony dollar a lasting place in United States numismatics. For a new collector, it offers an accessible introduction to modern dollar collecting. For an experienced specialist, it offers opportunities to study grading, varieties, mint errors, population rarity, and market behavior. And that is why the next 1980 dollar encountered should never be dismissed immediately. The date may be common enough, but the right combination of preservation, quality, and rarity could make one particular example far more interesting than it first appears. And thirdly, the most valuable and expensive United States ultra-rare coin can sometimes begin with an object that looks like it belongs at the bottom of an old drawer rather than inside a serious collection. And today that object is the 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollar with the Denver D Mint mark, a $1 coin that can appear scratched, dirty, darkened, worn, and almost completely ordinary. Yet the story becomes far more interesting when its surfaces are examined carefully, because the 1979 D Susan B. Anthony dollar sits at the beginning of an important chapter in United States coinage, and exceptional examples have brought substantial premiums when condition, rarity, and unusual mint characteristics come together. The Denver Mint produced 288,015,744 examples of the 1979 D issue, so the ordinary circulated coin is not inherently a six-figure rarity. Current numismatic references place typical circulated examples only modestly above face value. But that is precisely what makes the mystery so compelling. A coin that looks worthless may contain an unusual minting characteristic, an extraordinary state of preservation hidden beneath grime, or an authenticated error that separates it from millions of ordinary pieces. ECGS records an auction high of $1,528 for a 1979 D regular strike example, graded MS-68, while a remarkable 1979 D struck on a $2 planchet brought $748 at auction despite being only MS-61. The real lesson is not that every dirty Anthony dollar is secretly worth a fortune, but that appearance alone cannot reveal the complete story of a coin. To understand why this little dollar matters, the clock has to be turned back to 1979, a year when the United States was experiencing serious economic pressure and a rapidly changing monetary environment. Inflation was high, consumer prices were climbing, and the cost of producing and circulating money was an increasingly important concern. The Susan B. Anthony dollar was introduced during this atmosphere of economic uncertainty and practical experimentation. The United States Mint was looking for a durable dollar denomination that could work efficiently in vending machines and other coin-operated equipment, while studies had indicated that a metallic dollar could remain useful in circulation far longer than a paper dollar. The new coin was dramatically smaller than the large silver dollars familiar from earlier generations, measuring about 26.5 millimeters across and weighing 8.1 grams. It also represented a major cultural moment. Susan B. Anthony, the 19th century advocate for women's suffrage and social reform, became the first woman featured on a regularly circulating United States coin. The design by Frank Gasparo placed Anthony's portrait on the obverse and the Apollo 11-inspired eagle and moon design on the reverse, connecting the coin to both social history and the technological optimism of the space age. When the first Susan B. Anthony dollars entered circulation on July 2, 1979, they were not merely another denomination. They were an attempt to create a modern dollar for a modern United States. The 1979 D was struck at the Denver Mint, and the small d mint mark identifies its origin. Unlike the 1979 Philadelphia issue, which is famous for its narrow rim and scarcer wide rim varieties, the Denver issue does not carry that same major wide rim distinction, making condition and genuine mint errors particularly important when evaluating an unusual specimen. With 288,015,744 coins produced, the mintage sounds enormous, and in ordinary circulated grades the issue remains readily available. But mintage is only the beginning of a rarity investigation. Millions of coins can disappear into circulation, be damaged, lost, melted, discarded, or simply remain outside the collector market, while the number of examples surviving in truly exceptional grades can become dramatically smaller. PCGS's population data show thousands of certified 1979D examples across mint state grades, but the population becomes much thinner at the highest levels, illustrating an important principle of modern numismatics. A large original mintage does not guarantee a large supply of top-quality survivors. This is where an apparently ordinary 1979D can become fascinating. A heavily circulated specimen may be worth little more than its face value, while an extraordinarily preserved coin or one possessing a verified minting anomaly can enter an entirely different collecting category. The D beneath the date is therefore not a magic symbol by itself. It is the starting point for identifying the coin's production history and determining whether something genuinely unusual happened to it. Now consider the coin itself after decades of real-world existence. Imagine a 1979 D Susan B. Anthony dollar with deep scratches crossing the portrait, dark residue gathered around the lettering, dull gray and brown discoloration covering the fields, flattened high points on Susan B. Anthony's cheek and hair, and grime embedded around the reeded edge. Perhaps the date is partially worn, perhaps the reverse has lost much of its original brightness, and perhaps the surface has acquired stains from years of contact with other metals, paper, moisture, dirt, or household environments. To an untrained eye, such a coin may appear ruined. To a collector, however, every mark demands a question. Is the line a normal circulation scratch, or could it represent a genuine mint-made die characteristic? Is the discoloration merely environmental tunning, or does it indicate a reaction involving the copper-nickel outer layers? Is an apparent missing design element caused by wear, damage, or a striking problem? Even severe-looking surface damage should not automatically be confused with a mint error. A coin damaged after leaving the mint generally does not become valuable simply because the damage looks dramatic. In fact, cleaning, corrosion, gouging, polishing, or artificial alteration can reduce desirability. Yet the damage remains historically interesting because it documents the coin's journey through circulation. A battered 1979D can tell a story of machines, cash registers, vending equipment, pockets, drawers, and decades of handling that a pristine coin never experienced. The psychology of collectors becomes especially powerful when an ordinary-looking object contains an extraordinary story. Coin collecting is not exclusively a competition for flawless surfaces. Some specialists pursue varieties, die states, mint errors, unusual planchets, dramatic striking mistakes, and coins with remarkable provenance because these pieces provide evidence of something that went wrong, changed, or survived in an unexpected way. A circulated 1979D with scratches and grime can therefore become compelling if careful examination reveals a genuine mint-made anomaly beneath the damage. The fascination comes from the contrast. An object that appears to have no importance suddenly becomes a physical record of the manufacturing process at the Denver Mint. That contrast also explains why survival rarity matters. A common coin with ordinary wear may remain common, while a rare error can become scarce regardless of how unattractive it looks. Collectors are often willing to look beyond surface beauty when the underlying story is strong and the attribution is credible. The most important distinction is between damage created after minting and an unusual feature created during minting. That distinction can transform the entire evaluation of a coin. The 1979D issue also provides several examples of the kinds of anomalies that can create genuine collector interest. PCGS auction records document a 1979D Susan B. Anthony dollar struck on a $0.25 planchet, an unusual wrong planchet error that sold for $748 in MS61 and appeared in multiple heritage auction sales. Another documented example involved clashed dies, where unintended contact between dies can transfer design elements or create unusual impressions. A 1979D clash dies example graded MS64 sold for $81 in a heritage auction. These documented cases demonstrate why an unusual-looking coin deserves examination, but they also reveal the importance of authentication. Genuine mint error has a completely different status from a coin that was scratched, bent, chemically altered, or otherwise damaged after leaving the mint. Other possible mint-made phenomena can include struck-through errors, die deterioration, planchet defects, incomplete striking, or unusual metal characteristics, but each must be evaluated individually. A mysterious mark is not automatically an error, and a dramatic appearance is not automatically evidence of rarity. The strongest discoveries are those where the physical evidence, minting mechanics, dimensions, weight, and expert attribution all support the same conclusion. The auction market adds another layer to the story because collectors do not always compete strictly according to simple price guide numbers. A documented error, exceptional grade, unusual provenance, or visually dramatic piece can attract concentrated attention from specialists. Online marketplaces, collector forums, social media videos, and specialty auctions can expose unusual coins to audiences far larger than the traditional local coin shop. When several determined bidders want the same genuinely scarce piece, the final price can rise well above an ordinary retail estimate. Yet the documented numbers for the 1979D provide an important reality check. PCGS lists the regular strike auction record at $1,528 for MS68, while NGC's July 2026 guide places circulated 1979D examples around $1.05 to $1.35, and shows substantially higher values only as condition rises into elite mint state territory. Therefore, a scratched and dirty 1979D should not be described as automatically worth thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars. The dramatic possibility lies in discovering something genuinely exceptional. If an apparently ruined example were proven to possess an extremely rare mint error, extraordinary provenance, or another previously unrecognized characteristic, specialist competition could theoretically push the value far beyond the ordinary market range. A six-figure result, however, would require an extraordinary combination of rarity, authentication, historical importance, presentation, and intense bidding competition. It would be a hypothetical extreme scenario, not a normal expectation for a damaged 1979D. And that is where the real mystery of the 1979D Susan B. Anthony dollar comes to an end. Not with a promise that every scratched coin is a hidden fortune, but with the realization that the smallest details can separate an ordinary survivor from an extraordinary numismatic discovery. The documented market tells a clear story. Most circulated 1979D dollars remain modest value coins, while exceptional grades and verified errors can command dramatically higher prices. The coin's 288 million plus mintage does not erase the importance of individual rarity, because rarity can emerge from condition, error status, survival, and collector demand rather than from the original production number alone. The dirt, scratches, dark tunning, and worn surfaces of an old example should therefore be viewed as clues rather than automatic proof of value. Every date, every mint mark, every unusual edge, every strange design feature, and every unexpected surface characteristic deserves careful attention before the coin is dismissed. The 1979D Susan B. Anthony dollar is ultimately more than a $1 piece of metal. It is a survivor from a turbulent economic period, the first chapter of a new dollar experiment, a tribute to one of the most influential figures in American reform history, and a reminder that the history of money is often written on surfaces that have been scratched, worn, stained, and nearly forgotten. In coin collecting, perfection can be valuable, but mystery, authenticity, rarity, survival, and character can be just as powerful. The next extraordinary discovery may not be shining inside a perfect holder. It may be sitting quietly in an old collection, waiting for someone to look closely enough to understand what it really is. And fourthly, imagine finding a 1979 United States $1 coin that looks almost forgotten by time. Its surface is scratched, its color has darkened with age, and its once bright appearance has been replaced by uneven tunning. At first glance, it may seem like nothing more than an ordinary dollar from another era. But this is where the story of the 1979's Susan B. Anthony dollar becomes fascinating. Minted at the San Francisco Mint, the 1979's issue belongs to one of the most closely studied modern United States dollar series, and certain examples can command far more than their $1 face value. The crucial question is not simply whether the coin says 1979 or carries an S mint mark. The real question is what kind of 1979's it is, how it was struck, how well it survived, whether it carries a recognized variety or error, and whether its surfaces remain original. A scratched and toned example normally does not belong in the elite price category, but the coin still deserves careful examination because extraordinary value in modern numismatics can come from a combination of rarity, condition, variety, and documented certification rather than appearance alone. To understand why this little dollar exists, the story must return to the United States of 1979. The country was moving through an era of inflation, energy concerns, changing consumer habits, and economic uncertainty. Jimmy Carter was president, gasoline prices and energy shortages were major public concerns, and the American economy was experiencing the difficult combination of inflation and slow growth that would later be remembered as stagflation. At the same time, the United States Mint was preparing a major experiment in modern coinage, a much smaller dollar designed to be easier to carry and potentially more practical than the enormous Eisenhower dollar. The Susan B. Anthony dollar was authorized in 1978 and released to the public in 1979, becoming the first United States circulating coin to feature a real historical woman as its main portrait. The choice of Susan B. Anthony was historically significant because she had spent decades campaigning for women's voting rights and social reform. Yet the new dollar faced an immediate practical problem. Its size and appearance were extremely close to the quarter, leading to confusion among the public. The coin that was supposed to modernize the American dollar quickly became one of the country's most recognizable modern coinage experiments. The series itself was designed by Frank Gasparo, the chief engraver of the United States Mint. Gasparo placed a right-facing portrait of Susan B. Anthony on the obverse, surrounded by 13 stars representing the original colonies. The word liberty appears above her portrait, while In God We Trust is positioned near the right side of her head and the date appears below. The reverse is equally important because it connects the coin to the space age. It features the famous Apollo 11-inspired eagle descending toward the lunar surface, carrying an olive branch with the Earth visible in the background. The design was based on the emblem associated with the Apollo 11 mission, commemorating mankind's first landing on the moon. The coin measures approximately 26.5 millimeters in diameter, weighs 8.1 grams, and has a reeded edge. Most importantly, despite the common misconceptions sometimes attached to these dollars, the 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollar is not a silver dollar. It is a copper-nickel-clad coin with a pure copper center. That distinction matters when evaluating its market value because its collectible worth comes from numismatic characteristics, not silver bullion content. The San Francisco regular strike issue had a reported mintage of 109,576,000 pieces, an enormous production figure that immediately explains why an ordinary circulated 1979 is not automatically rare. Millions were manufactured, distributed, stored, and eventually released into commerce. Yet mintage alone never tells the entire story of rarity. A coin can have a large original production total but become scarce in a particular grade because very few examples survive with exceptional surfaces, sharp strikes, strong luster, and no distracting marks. The opposite can also happen. A coin with a comparatively small mintage can remain inexpensive when thousands of attractive examples survive and collector demand is modest. For the 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollar, the difference between an ordinary circulated piece and an elite certified example can therefore be enormous. Current NGC information places circulated 1979 examples around the low dollar range, while its listed mint state values rise gradually with grade and reach substantially higher levels for exceptional specimens. This is precisely why a scratched, toned coin should not be compared with a virtually flawless mint state example simply because both carry the same date and mint mark. There is another fascinating reason the 1979 deserves attention. San Francisco produced both regular strike and proof Susan B. Anthony dollars, and the proof coins contain one of the series' most famous varieties. The 1979 proof has two major mint mark types known as Type 1 and Type 2. Type 1 is commonly called the filled S because the mint mark has a more rounded, filled appearance. Type 2 displays a much clearer and more sharply defined S according to PCGS research. The Type 2 proofs were produced later in 1979 after the original mint mark punch was replaced. An estimate suggests that roughly 80 to 85% of the 3,677,175 proof dollars were Type 1, leaving approximately 15 to 20% as Type 2. The exact production split is not officially recorded, which is why these numbers are estimates rather than absolute counts. PCGS identifies the 1979 Type 2 proof as one of the key varieties of the entire Susan B. Anthony series, and NGC likewise describes the clear S as the rarer variety. But there is an important distinction for the coin being examined here. The famous large date and small date terminology does not describe the principal 1979 variety in the same way it describes the 1979 Philadelphia business strikes. The major 1979 Philadelphia varieties are narrow rim, also called far date, and wide rim, also called near date. On a 1979 proof, the diagnostic feature that receives the greatest attention is the shape of the mint mark. This demonstrates why identification must begin with the exact coin format rather than simply searching for a rare-sounding variety. A collector should inspect whether the coin is a regular circulation, strike, or a proof, study the mint mark, examine the date placement and surrounding geometry, and then compare the details against recognized variety references. A supposed double date, repunched mint mark, die crack, off-center strike, or other dramatic feature should never be assumed valuable merely because it looks unusual. Genuine mint errors are evaluated by specialists according to how and where the abnormality occurred during production. Minting errors themselves are miniature records of the manufacturing process. During die production, a design can be transferred imperfectly, creating hub doubling or other die varieties. In the era of hand-punched mint marks, a mint employee could position a mint mark punch differently from another die, and multiple impressions could sometimes produce repunched characteristics. A die can also develop cracks as metal fatigue accumulates, creating raised lines or other diagnostic features on struck coins. An off-center strike happens when a planchet is not properly centered between the dies, producing a visibly displaced design. Transitional errors occur when a wrong planchet, composition, or production setup is involved during a change in coinage specifications. However, the phrase wartime die stress belongs primarily to earlier periods of United States coinage and should not be casually applied to a 1979 Anthony dollar. The 1979 production environment was not a wartime coinage program, so any claimed error must be explained by the actual minting process rather than by an invented historical story. This is one reason professional attribution can be so important when a strange-looking coin appears to contain something extraordinary. Now consider the coin described here, scratched and toned. That condition immediately changes the valuation equation. Scratches are not the same as ordinary contact marks from circulation. Deep or numerous scratches can significantly reduce grade, and harsh cleaning can be even more damaging because it permanently changes the original surface texture. Tunning, however, is more complicated. Natural tunning can develop gradually through storage and environmental exposure, producing attractive shades that collectors sometimes appreciate. Unnatural discoloration, chemical treatment, or aggressive cleaning tells a different story. Originality is one of the most important concepts in modern coin grading because collectors want to know what the coin looked like after decades of existence, not what it looked like after someone attempted to make it appear newer. A scratched and naturally toned 1979 may therefore be historically interesting. But unless it contains a recognized variety or major authenticated error, its condition generally places it far below the prices associated with elite mint state examples. For realistic values, an ordinary circulated 1979 should generally be thought of as a near-face value collectible rather than an automatic jackpot. NGC's July 2026 information places circulated examples around approximately $1.05 to $1.35, depending on grade, while its historical grade table shows values rising through mint state, reaching roughly $130 at the highest listed level. These are guide figures, not guaranteed selling prices, and actual transactions can vary. For a scratched example in fine or very fine condition, a realistic range is generally around face value to only a small premium, perhaps roughly $1 to $3 depending on appearance and buyer demand. An attractive about uncirculated example might bring several dollars, while ordinary mint state examples can move into the single digits or tens depending on grade and certification. The truly interesting territory begins when a specimen reaches unusually high certified grades or possesses an important recognized variety. Auction history demonstrates just how dramatically the upper end can separate from ordinary examples. PCGS records an auction record of $15,000 for a 1979 regular strike Susan B. Anthony dollar, although the recorded entry is unusual because it was an NGC genuine example sold through eBay in September 2021, so it should not be interpreted as the normal market price for the date. PCGS also records earlier sales such as $2,300 for an MS64 example in the 2000 ANA sale of the Millennium, and $1,093 for an MS65 example in 2001. These historical results illustrate an important principle. A headline auction number can represent a highly unusual transaction, not the typical value of every coin carrying the same date and mint mark. For the 1979 Type 2 proof, PCGS lists an auction record of $1,955 across its recorded results, while the regular Type 1 proof has a much lower recorded ceiling. That difference exists because the Type 2 is a recognized scarce variety and because top-quality proof coins can attract intense competition. This is where registry set competition enters the story. Modern collectors are not always searching merely for a complete date and mint set. Some are competing to assemble the finest certified set possible through grading service registry programs. Once a coin reaches the highest grades, population reports become critically important. If hundreds of examples exist at one grade but only a handful exist one grade higher, the next superior coin can become disproportionately desirable. Two collectors competing for the same top position can transform a coin that might otherwise be worth a modest amount into a much more competitive auction item. PCGS specifically notes that the scarce 1979 S-Type 2 proof attracts collectors building Susan B. Anthony collections and PCGS registry sets. This is one reason elite prices are sometimes driven less by the metal inside the coin and more by the combination of rarity, grade, certification, population scarcity, and collector competition. For a scratched and toned coin, professional grading becomes worthwhile only when there is a credible reason to believe something unusual is present. A coin with obvious scratches, circulation wear, or evidence of cleaning is unlikely to transform into a valuable mint state specimen simply because it receives a certification label. But authentication can become extremely important when the coin appears to show a genuine mint error, an unusual proof format, or a recognized variety. Professional graders evaluate strike quality, surface preservation, luster, contact marks, scratches, color, and signs of alteration. They also distinguish between damage that occurred at the mint and damage that happened decades later. A raised line created by cracked die can be collectible. A scratch created by a sharp object after the coin left the mint is simply damage. That difference can mean the difference between an interesting variety and an ordinary circulated dollar. And then comes the most important lesson of the 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollar. Rarity is not always visible at first glance. The coin might sit in an old collection looking dark and worn, surrounded by ordinary pocket change. It might have a damaged surface and no obvious beauty. Yet a careful examination of the mint mark, date, strike, edge, surfaces, and overall construction can reveal whether it belongs to an important category. A normal scratched 1979 S remains a normal scratch coin, but a genuine major mint error, a scarce proof variety, or an exceptionally preserved specimen can completely change the story. That is why experienced collectors examine before they dismiss. They do not assume every unusual coin is rare, but they also understand that the smallest diagnostic detail can sometimes separate a common piece from a serious numismatic discovery. In the end, the 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollar represents one of the most intriguing chapters in modern United States coinage. It was born during a period of economic uncertainty. Introduced as an ambitious attempt to reinvent the American dollar, designed by Frank Gasparro, and connected on its reverse to the extraordinary achievement of Apollo 11. More than 109 million regular strike examples were produced at San Francisco, making the ordinary issue plentiful, while the separate proof production created the famous Type 1 and scarcer Type 2 mint mark varieties. A scratched and toned 1979 S should therefore not be advertised as a guaranteed fortune. In most cases, its value remains modest. But the real excitement comes from knowing what to look for. The highest prices belong to exceptional coins with exceptional evidence behind them. Extraordinary preservation, recognized varieties, major authenticated errors, rare populations, strong provenance, or intense competition among advanced collectors. And one final correction makes the story even more interesting. This is not a 10-cent silver coin. It is a $1 copper-nickel-clad coin. Yet under the right extraordinary circumstances, that ordinary-looking piece of modern American history can move from face value into the realm of serious numismatic value. That is the mystery hidden inside the Susan B. Anthony dollar, and it is exactly why even a scratched, toned coin from 1979 deserves a second look.